This is News with the Disney Dude. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel for more content, and please hit that thumbs up if you like the video. This episode is going to be a little bit more different. This episode is going to be a special episode of News with the Disney Dude. Because I really want to spend this time talking about probably one of my favorite attractions at Walt Disney World. As you can probably already guess by the shirt, Muppet Vision 3D and what it means to so many people, and what it meant to so many people, and Disney's decision to basically get rid of it like it was nothing, alright? And my hopes, what they're going to do with it, what I think they're going to do with it, all of that I'll cover. But I just want to reiterate, the event that I went to was absolutely spectacular. Just seeing so many of the Imagineers that worked on the attraction and hearing their stories and listening to them was just a fascinating treat. And then to have Jim Henson's daughter, Heather, there as well as a special guest, and hearing her talk about the attraction and her dad and his life and career was just absolutely magnificent. I couldn't have asked for a better, you couldn't ask for a better send-off than the panels and presentations that I sat through. It was, just the labor of love and care and attention that went into Muppet Vision 3D was just spectacular. I went on that the last show, so I'm not gonna go into all of that again. But definitely give that video a watch, because that I learned so much information about the history and the making of Muppet Vision 3D that it was just phenomenal. And then getting to meet Heather was just a treat. She couldn't have been nicer. She couldn't have been more, down to earth. And the whole thing, the whole experience was just magical. And then on June 7th, like I said, a group of us went and saw Muppet Vision 3D for the last time, which was very emotional, very, it was great, but it was emotional at the same time. Like I said, they were selling wristbands for the final show at 10 o'clock. I didn't go to that. Again, I live all the way in I say all the way, but I live over an hour away in Melbourne, Florida. So and plus I had gotten up really early anyway, because I had to be there before 10 o'clock. So 10 to 10, that was too much for me. I didn't really want to do that. I would have loved to have done that, but it just would have been a really long day, and it wouldn't have been, it probably wouldn't have been great for me, because I would have been exhausted and tired anyway. But it was really nice. What I have seen on social media and online was was great. You know, when we all went into when our group went in to see Muppet Vision 3D, everybody was so respectful, and everybody was so, they really respected the attraction. Now, I didn't get to close It's Tough to Be a Bug because I was blocked out during that time. So I had to say my goodbyes earlier, but, watching the videos of that last performance online was awful. It was awful. I mean, people were yelling and screaming. They weren't, shouting profanity or anything, but, they were shouting and screaming the words and, just making the whole experience so unbearable for other people. It was just not, from what I had heard, and even from Tom Corliss, it was not a great experience. He said it was just pandemonium. It was awful. People were not being respectful and everything. And I have to tell you, when I closed, I didn't close, but when I went to my final show of Muppet Vision 3D, everybody was so respectful. People were saying the words and everything, but they weren't screaming them, and they weren't yelling them. So it made the experience so much enjoyable, for regular guests, which, is the way it's supposed to be. So, I thank everybody for not, being totally out of hand, out of sync. They, as you can imagine, the line was really, really long the last day. It wrapped all the way to Galaxy's Edge, reaching Rise of the Resistance, because so many people wanted to say goodbye. But, from what I had heard from Tom and from cast members and everything, people could not have been more pleasant and respectful. People were, it was not, they had, obviously it was closing, so they had, they had a really long extended queue and ropes everywhere. People were not, as far as I know, people were not climbing over ropes. People were not yelling and screaming at the cast members to get in there. It was not pandemonium. It was not pandemonium. People were, like I said, again, people were so respectful. People were, just wanting to pay tribute to Jim Henson and his life and career and his last project. So, kudos to the team that put that all together. Kudos to Disney for doing that, because they knew that it was gonna be, if they didn't do that, it would have been chaos. It would have been another It's Tough to Be a Bug closing. All right. But, I think that it was really sweet. It was really kind that Heather Henson was the last person to enter. They closed the doors right after she went into the building. She was the very last person to go in. And everybody at the entrance of the attraction were singing, as she was going in, they were singing Rainbow Connection. And she looked like she was just, in tears. The fans that, were there and, clapping and cheering and, the whole experience, from my understanding, was really spectacular. So, and I'm really glad that Disney got to, that Heather was the last person in to see, the last guest in to see the show, so she could have closure and and say her goodbyes as well. So that was really sweet. That was great. So the whole event was great. The whole experience was spectacular. Disney really handled it really, really well. But I want to talk about Muppet Vision 3D, what it meant to me. I kind of went over this already, but I just want to do it again. So when we used to come here to Walt Disney World, because we came all the time. We were avid Walt Disney World fans. We loved, my mom, my dad, myself, we all loved coming to Walt Disney World. We loved coming specifically to MGM Studios because we were not, big thrill-seeking ride people. We just weren't, okay? So we were more into slow rides or the shows or, things of that nature. So, when we came to specifically to MGM Studios, we always did the Great Movie Ride. We always did Voyage of the Little Mermaid. We always did Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular. We always did Beauty and the Beast live on stage. And we also did, as you can imagine, Muppet Vision 3D. And then once we did all that, and this was before Fantasmic was even a thing. So there was no nighttime entertainment. So this was way before Fantasmic. And then at the end of the day, my parents would always ask me, what would you like to do? And again, at MGM Studios, you were limited. And we also did the tram tour as well. I forgot to mention that. But with MGM Studios, you were really limited. You only had like 2 rides that we, because again, we were not thrill seekers. We didn't do Star Tours. We let my dad do Tower of Terror. that was his thing. My mom and I didn't do that. We never did Rock and Roller Coaster. I didn't even do that until I became a pass holder. But anyway, at the end of the day, my parents would always be, or close to the end of the day, my parents would always ask, what do you want to do again? And I would always say, let's do Muppet Vision 3D again. And we did it again and again and again and again and again. It was one of those attractions that you never got bored with. We never, my parents were never like, oh, we really have to do Muppets again. Come on. They were always entertained, with it. And, they were really patient with me because I always wanted to do it. But we always did Muppet Vision multiple times throughout the day. Because, we were all big Jim Henson fans. We were all, it was a little bit before my generation, but my parents grew up with the Muppet Show, okay? And then that was one of the things that was kind of passed down to me was the Muppet Show. So I was introduced to it at a very early age. Loved the Muppets, and then coming to Walt Disney World, coming to see Muppet Vision 3D was just a treat. It was spectacular. It was the way that, the Muppets, in my mind, were always supposed to be, And then as things changed with MGM Studios, it was, they got rid of the tram tour, and then eventually they got rid of the Great Movie Ride. And I always assumed, as did a lot of people, that Muppet Vision 3D was always going to be there. It was always going to be there. We would, enjoy this attraction until at least our time was over. Our time on this earth was over. Okay? So we just assumed that Muppet Vision 3D was always going to be there. Okay? And then along comes Bob Chapek, who came in and basically said, no, we are getting rid of Muppet Vision 3D. That is an old, outdated attraction. It needs to go, and we need to put something different in. Okay? And all of us fans just had a fit. I mean, we were like, no, we cannot let this happen. We cannot let this happen. Okay? And then, as luck would have it, Bob Chapek ended up getting fired and replaced again by Bob Iger. And then we were like, oh, whew, okay, now we can rest easy. Now we can rest easy in knowing that Muppet Vision 3D is not going anywhere, at least for a long, long time. That it's going to stay here, and we're going to enjoy it for many years to come. Well, unfortunately, that didn't happen, And again, I don't know if this was something that Bob Chapek had signed off on before Bob Iger came back. I don't know. It could explain the reason why it got, closed so quick, but I have no idea. I don't know. So I can't tell you. But, I mean, look, I know that we all want to get mad at Bob Iger about, them closing Muppet Vision 3D. But, to be honest, I don't think that was him. I really don't think that was him. I truly believe that was a Bob Chapek decision. All right? Because, and then, had Bob still been there, had he not got fired, we would have lost Muppet Vision 3D a couple years ago. We would have lost it already. I mean, it already would have been gone. So, but again, I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know if he signed off on it or if it, was just in the production line and it was like, okay, I have no idea. I really have no idea. And then it didn't help because they released two types of concept art. One concept art was the one where Sully and the kids are facing the direction of Muppet Vision 3D. That's the one that we all dismissed. We were like, no, that's not happening. Bob Chapek is gone, so they're not getting rid of Muppet Vision 3D. So we just discarded that as a mistake. And then they did another piece of concept art which had Sully and the kids facing the direction of Star Wars Launch Bay. So we were like, okay, that's where it's going. That's where it's, that's where Monsters Inc., that's where Monstropolis is going. And, we were like, you have so much more room over there. You knock down the parking garage, the old animation building, and the launch bay, that whole area, knock that down. You have plenty of space. You would have plenty of space instead of, they're not knocking down the building for Muppet Vision, but they're building past the gate. So when you exited Muppet Vision 3D and you saw that, you literally passed right by us, a big set of giant gates. So that's where the building is. That's where that's where the door coaster is going to go, is back in that area. So that's where that's going. Okay, so the ride's not replacing Muppet Vision, but we don't even know what's replacing Muppet Vision 3D yet. They refuse to tell us what's replacing Muppet Vision 3D. All right, they said that it's going to be a Monsters Inc. stage show, but they haven't released concept art. They've never said anything else about it, and that's a big shame. That is a big blunder on their part, because if you believe in your project, then you should tell people about it. Okay, you should tell people about it and say, this is what we're doing. Yes, we are replacing Muppet Vision 3D. And, here's a look at the Monsters Inc. stage show that's replacing it. And then we're putting the ride all the way, in the back of the land. But they're not doing that. They're not doing that. They refuse to give us concept art for this Monsters Inc. stage show. And I'm sorry. That is ridiculous. That is ridiculous, and that is outrageous. I mean, they are so afraid because they knew that we were going to be upset about Muppet Vision 3D, but they've never released any concept art or anything, and they're just going on the defensive. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous, and that is outrageous. So, shame on them. Shame on them for shame on them for even for getting rid of Muppet Vision 3D in the first place. And then you're going to add insult to injury and say that, we're not even giving you any details about what's replacing it. That's bad. That is bad. That's not bad show, but that's almost as bad. That's almost as bad, but you're not even going to tell us what you're replacing Muppet Vision 3D with. So that is outrageous. That is outrageous, and that is ridiculous. So, and then to add further insult to injury, you said, that you're replacing Rock and Roller Coaster starring Aerosmith, and you're going to, that's where the Muppets are going. Okay, well, you just took a show that everybody could watch. Anybody can watch. Everybody and their mother could have watched Muppet Vision 3D. You took that away, and now you're replacing it with a ride that half the people can only do. Okay? Children can't ride, Rock and Roller Coaster starring the Muppets or whatever they're calling it. People with back problems or mobility problems or heart problems or whatever, they can't ride it either. And that is bad. That is bad. Okay, I will always resent that decision. All right, look, I know that Aerosmith is kind of outdated. It's kind of, it does need to go, but Muppets does not need to take over Rock and Roller Coaster. I am sorry. That is ridiculous. That is ridiculous. All right. So for them to say we're closing Muppet Vision 3D, a show that anybody can do, and we're replacing them with a ride that not everyone can do, I think is ridiculous. It is ridiculous, and they should be shamed. They should be shamed. All right. So that's bad. That is bad. And then, and we all want to talk about, when the Villains Land opens at Magic Kingdom and they move the villain show over there. We want to, we want to say that, that they can put Muppet Vision 3D right in that space. I don't know if that's going to happen. I really don't know. I would love to be wrong. I would really love to be wrong. And I would love to have faith that the team at Walt Disney World would do the right thing. Would do the right thing and move Muppet Vision 3D right in that space where Villains is. But I don't know if that's happening. I just don't think that the team has that kind of spunk in them. I think that they're wanting to move on. So I don't see it happening. I just don't. And that really hurts my heart. That really hurts my heart because I would, I'm one of those people that's like, move it right there. Move, put it right next to Rock and Roller Coaster, and then you have a new Muppets area. Because that would be the easiest solution. That would be the easiest solution. Now, will they do that? I don't know. Probably not. Probably not. I mean, I would love to be wrong. I would love to come out and tell you that that's what they're doing. I don't know. I really have no idea. Okay? But I really wouldn't hold my breath. But I really hope that in my heart, until I learn otherwise, I really hope that happens. I really, really hope that happens. But I just don't think, I don't think Walt Disney World management has it in them to say, we're going to put the show back, we're going to reinstate the show, and we're going to put it in this new space. I just don't. I mean, only time is going to tell. Only time is going to tell. All right? And now, next I want to talk about, the comments and everything online. So many people have expressed their love and admiration for Muppet Vision 3D, which was fantastic. It was great seeing all these comments, saying, we're gonna miss this show. It was always a must do. And, we did it every trip and blah, blah, blah. And that's great. That warms my heart to see that so many people are gonna miss this show. But I want to talk about the haters. Because these people are absolutely outrageous. They, they were like, oh, thank God Muppet Vision is closing. It's an outdated attraction. It doesn't deserve to be in that space anymore. Jim Henson is basically, no one cares about Muppets anymore. And, no one cares about Jim Henson. And they're, thank God they're getting rid of it. And, and even more people were like, oh, it was a great place for a nap. It was a great place to, take a nice snooze from the park. I do not agree with that. I am sorry if you felt that way, but that is outrageous. That is outrageous behavior. All right? That's like saying, the Carousel of Progress is outdated. It's a good place for a nap. No one cares about the Carousel of Progress anymore. I'm sorry. That is outrageous. That is ridiculous, and I'm always going to fight you. I'm always going to fight you on that. I got into so many arguments with people on social media because, they were like, that was an outdated attraction, and people are only coming to see that show because it's closing, and, they said so many hurtful things and so many nasty things about Heather Henson and the Jim Henson Corporation, and I basically said, you were not there. I can guarantee you were not there. So how dare you come in and say those things, and show just so much disrespect for an attraction that you didn't like, and that you're gonna make sure that nobody else likes as well. So you're gonna spread that around. All right? Shame on you. Shame on you for doing that. All right? That That is absolutely asinine and ridiculous. And, you know, and, you know, and someone else said online that, said that, Muppet Vision 3D was an old, outdated attraction, and, Walt Disney World needs to get rid of their older attractions because they're outdated. And I said, well, then that's like saying they should get rid of Pirates, they should get rid of Mansion, they should get rid of It's a Small World, because you guys don't care about them. And they wrote back, they said, eventually that's what's going to happen. Eventually that's what's going to happen. People are going to stop coming, and they're going to close them down. I don't know what world you live in, but it's not the world that I'm living in. Those attractions are still popular as they were when they first opened. So if you don't like those attractions, then that's fine. I don't care. But for people to come out and say that these are outdated attractions and they need to go and no one cares about them anymore and show so much disrespect, it's like, you have no idea. You have no idea what you're saying. All right? Pirates of the Caribbean holds a historic significance. Not only here at Walt Disney World, it's very historical at Disneyland because it was the last attraction that Walt Disney personally got to see. He didn't see it completed, but he got to see a lot of it completed. All right? So, and It's a Small World, that was his lifetime. Haunted Mansion, that was his lifetime. All right? These three attractions, Mansion, Pirates, It's a Small World, those are the three most important rides, not only at Disneyland, but at Walt Disney World. And for people to come in and say that those rides are going to close anyway because they're old and they're outdated and they're garbage, and once they stop drawing crowds, they're going to close them anyway, then obviously you don't come to the parks. Then obviously you do not come to the parks where you get to see so many people in line for these attractions. They still draw a huge amount of people. And look, Muppet Vision 3D was the same way. And that theater held a lot of people. It held a lot of people. Just because there was not a lot of people in the theater does not mean that it was not popular. That pre-show was always extremely full. And that theater was because again, it held a lot of people. But that theater was only half full. Because, again, it was only half capacity. So, for those haters out there, I say, keep those comments to yourself. You're not doing anyone any favors. You're just making myself and other people really unhappy. And that's not helping the situation. That is not helping the situation. All right? And then for people on the other end of the spectrum to get so upset and outraged that they are closing the Rivers of America and the riverboat at Magic Kingdom and replacing it with cars, for them to get so mad and so outraged over this is kind of ridiculous. It is kind of ridiculous. All right? Because the riverboat, and I said this on my last episode as well. Okay, when I did a video on the 7th when I came back, I said, Walt Disney World audiences, they look at Tom Sawyer Island and they look at the riverboat and they have no idea what that means. They don't get it. They have no idea. Not a clue. So they are further attached from that than anything else. So for them to compare Tom Sawyer Island and the riverboat to Muppet Vision 3D, it's not the same. You are comparing apples to oranges. Okay? Those are two completely separate, different things. All right? It's different at Disneyland. Speaking on Tom Sawyer Island and the Rivers of America and the Riverboat, it's different at Disneyland because that's where Walt Disney held his party for Disneyland. That's, the attraction means so much to that park. Okay? Ours is just a copy. All right? It doesn't mean anything to people here. It doesn't. All right? Whereas Muppet Vision 3D is on the total other side of the spectrum. Okay? Florida's Muppet Vision 3D came first. This is where Jim Henson came, and this is where he was going to put his film. So Muppet Vision 3D belongs in Florida. It belongs in Florida. Okay? The one at California was a copy of ours. Okay? So I understand why it had to close at Disneyland, because it was not significant to Disneyland. Okay? And they were, and that place is really, really, really landlocked. So you are very, if you want to do something new, you have to replace something. So that's why, that's why they had to replace Muppet Vision 3D over there, because, if they had to expand, they had to lose something. So Muppet Vision 3D over in California was not significant. It was not as historical as to the one here. All right, the one here meant so much more, and you had another spot. Disney had another spot to put Monsters, Inc. in. All right, they didn't have to replace Muppet Vision 3D. They did not. They decided to go that route because it was probably better. It was probably cheaper for them to do. Okay? They didn't have to replace Muppet Vision 3D, but they chose to. They chose to go that route. And I am sorry, but I will always resent that decision. I will always resent that decision. And look, if they do bring back, if they resurrect Muppet Vision 3D, then great. That would be fantastic. I just don't think it's going to happen with this, with the powers that be and everything. But I would love to be wrong. Again, I would love to be wrong and say that Muppet Vision is going where Villains is right now. I just don't. I just don't think it's going to happen. But I am going to keep hoping and praying that that's what's going to happen. But in my head, I just don't see it happening. But in my heart, with all of my heart, that's what I would love. I would absolutely love for them to do that. All right? And that's two conflicting things, okay? So, I don't know. If Muppet Vision 3D does get resurrected and they do put it in where Villains is, then that would be fantastic. That would be absolutely fantastic. All right? But I just don't know. I just don't know. Okay? And for so many people, again, to say, well, you should just put it on Disney Plus and blah, blah, blah. No. It does not belong on Disney Plus. I am sorry that you feel that way, but that is absolutely outrageous. It is ridiculous and it is outrageous, and it is a further insult to injury to Jim Henson for them to do that. If they were to do that, then that would be a big mistake. It was already a big mistake to get rid of it in the first place, and then if you're going to put it on Disney Plus, that would be another huge mistake. So, it's I really hope that doesn't happen. I really hope that doesn't happen. But those are my feelings on this whole subject. I just wanted to come out and talk about this a little more, because I think people are being so disrespectful to Jim Henson and his legacy. They are just being totally disrespectful. And then on the other hand, then they want to defend themselves by saying, well, they shouldn't get rid of the riverboat and the rivers of America and Tom Sawyer Island because it means so much to the Magic Kingdom. It doesn't. It doesn't. I really hate to be that guy. But it doesn't. It does not. And people are also saying that Muppets should replace the Hall of Presidents. No, absolutely not. The Hall of Presidents is essential to Walt Disney World. All right? It was something that Walt Disney always wanted to do. He couldn't do it in his lifetime. He could only do Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, and it was Roy Disney, his brother, who came out when Walt Disney World was being developed and being built, that he said the Hall of Presidents it must be at Walt Disney World. So for people to say, you should get rid of the Hall of Presidents is totally asinine. Totally asinine. People are fighting the wrong battles. They are fighting the wrong battles. Okay? And people are going to, whether it's me or Tom or whoever, and pick fights with us and defending the riverboat and defending Liberty Square, defending, getting rid of either Muppets or the Hall of Presidents. You are wrong. You are absolutely wrong, and we're going to tell you that. We are going to tell you that. And if that rubs you the wrong way, then I'm sorry. I'm sorry you feel that way. But that's the way it has to be. It has to be that way. Okay? Just because you don't see those attractions, or you don't ride those attractions and you don't see those shows, does not mean that they don't mean anything else to anybody else. All right? I want the haters to go online, and I want you to look up, what did the Country Bear Jamboree look like on the last day of operation? And I want you to look at, what did Muppet Vision 3D look like on the last day of operation? Because I'll tell you, I was at the closing for both of those. And so many people showed up to pay their last respects. I mean, thank God we kept the Country Bears. They updated them, but, so many great people came out and said their goodbyes to the original Country Bear Jamboree, and they said their goodbyes to Muppet Vision 3D. So if you don't want to acknowledge that fact, then that's your problem. Okay? But don't come in the comments and be like, well, that's an outdated attraction and no one cared and blah, blah, blah. Blah, 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 blah. I'm sorry. You were not there. You were not there. Okay? So you don't get to say that. You don't get to say that. All right? And if I make enemies on this, then so be it. But that's where I stand. That's, I will always defend Hall of Presidents, Pirates, Mansion, Small World, Muppet Vision 3D. I will always defend, and Carousel of Progress. I will always defend these classic attractions, because they should never, ever, ever close or be replaced. They should not. Okay? So, we've Great Movie Ride, when that closed, that was devastating. Okay? But Muppet Vision 3D closing I think that was even more devastating. That was even more devastating to us than closing the Great Movie Ride. All right? So it's, And when I walked around the park that day, when we were all saying goodbye to Muppet Vision 3D, so many people were, in tears. But they were also happy. They were celebrating Jim Henson's life and career. I'd never heard one person, not one person in that sea of people, in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people that I met that day, that were like, oh, thank God that's closing. I never met one person. Not one. And believe me, I met a lot of people that day. All right? We met a lot of people that day. And not one of them, not a single person, was happy that they were getting rid of Muppet Vision 3D. It's always the people that are online, that come once in a lifetime, and those are the people that get that, and those are the people that are happy that it's changing. Okay? But I don't agree with them. I do not agree with them. And again, if this rubs people the wrong way, then I'm sorry. But you do not belong at Walt Disney World. You don't. Okay? You have other places to go. Okay? If the nostalgia here is too much for you, go somewhere else. Okay? So, but that's my 2 cents on the subject. Let me know how you feel. I'm sure maybe some of the haters are gonna come in, and they're gonna defend the closing of this attraction, but I don't care. I don't care. This attraction, above everything else, should never have closed and never should have gone away. And if they bring it back, if they do resurrect this attraction, then that would they would win us back. They would win us back. But I just don't see them doing that. I just don't. But if they do, then they're going to deserve all the praise in the world. But only time is going to tell. Only time is going to tell. So, but I'm going to leave it at that. Let me know how you feel. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of commenting, a lot of ranting and raving, but that's the way that a lot of us feel. Okay? So, but there you are. I did want to talk about that again. So on Wednesday's show, we're going to get back to the regular news and everything. But with Muppet Vision closing and everything else changing at Walt Disney World and people getting so upset over the wrong things, I just wanted to come out and talk again about this, all right? So, but if you like this video, please hit that like button. Please subscribe to my channel for more content if I don't lose anybody. But I thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening. And just remember that tomorrow is just a dream away.